I'm going to show you how to use basic shapes and your Pathfinder menu to create a stylized revolver pistol similar to this one. Let's go ahead and get started. Basically, you're just going to start with your circle ellipse tool. Now, if you hit Alt, it brings it from the center out. If you hold Shift while doing that, it locks it to a perfect circle, and you can drag it out. Other option you can do, and it's the one I'm going to use for this, is just click and you can tell it the dimensions you want. And I want it to be 6 by 6. Now later I'm going to shrink that down a little, but to get my proportions, that's what I want to do. I'm going to bring that stroke level down to 1. I'm going to use my tools up here, or I can come over here and find the align tools, and I'm going to center that vertical and horizontal on my artboard. Then I'm going to make another circle, 2 inches by 2 inches, and select both of those, center that along the top to bottom. Make sure both of those have a fill. Now over here you've got this little thing that'll automatically default fill and stroke to black and white. I'm wanting to make sure that I have a fill so I can kind of see what's going on, what's going to get cut out. It also helps with some of the Pathfinder features. I'm going to select this one and move it out just a little. Now if I hold Shift while moving, it locks it in 45-degree angles so I can make sure I'm continuously straight. If I forgot to do that and I moved it out, I could just select them again and center it back up. That looks good right there. Now I'm wanting to rotate this circle around the larger circle. So to do that, I come over here and I get my rotate tool. Now right now any rotation I do is going to be around the center of whatever object I have selected. But to change that, I currently have my view smart guides on, and that's going to help me find the center. Make sure that I've got that selected again. Now as you see, it pops up that little center, and I'm going to push Alt and click, and that set my rotation around where I clicked. And since I had it in the center of this, it's going to rotate around that. And you can see it jumped over here because I have my preview. Alt. Now I want it to rotate a certain number of times around that. Now to get that, I'm going to click in this little box, and I don't have to know how many degrees it is around this to get how many however I want. I know a circle is 360 degrees, and then I divide that by the number of times I want to rotate this circle down here around. And this is a revolver, 6 cylinders, so I'm going to type 6 there, and then it goes preview and pops it around. Now if I hit OK, it's just going to move this one over there, but if I hit copy, it leaves the one I originally had and puts a second copy here. Now I could go and do that again 5 more times, or before clicking anywhere I can push the Control and then D, and that'll duplicate whatever I just did. That's why I didn't want to do anything else before doing this. And I just keep doing that until I have my 6 copies of that circle. Grab my select tool, select everything, or select all, but you can also do Control A as a hotkey. Go over here to the little square, triple square thing with two larger with a center in it. That is your Pathfinder tool. And that is a very useful tool. The one we're looking for this one is minus back. Or, I'm sorry, minus front. And what that's going to do is all of these little circles are in front of that back circle. So the front circles are going to be deleted, and any place where they intersect, they're going to remove, like so. Now I have the basic solid outline of my pistol cylinder. Keep moving forward. I'm going to put a little construction circle in the center. Shift Alt to make sure it's a perfect circle. Just to ensure that everything's centered, I'm going to, it was. Now the reason why I put that little circle in there is it doesn't always give me center of odd shapes like this when I'm using the rotate tool, but it will give me the center of this circle. So, boom, grab my ellipse tool, and since I've got my smart guides on, it pulls my tabs, my little tails. The smart guides are quite handy when doing something like this, but occasionally you will want to turn them off because the computer will assume that you're wanting to be on the center if you're a little off. Like if you notice my cursor right now, it is a smidge off to the right, but it's still centering. It's going to snap it to center. Occasionally you don't want that, so you just turn smart guides off whenever you're wanting to be able to precise move anything where you want it. But for this one, it is very handy to snap to the center. I'm going to push Alt because I want my circle to build out from the center, and I'm going to push Shift because I want it to be a circle. And I went a little too high, so I will Control Z, undo. I could have also just nudged it into place, but I wanted to give you the Control Z, undo command. Okay, so now we have the first chamber. Make sure it's selected, grab your rotate tool, find the center again, push Alt and click. Now it will remember whatever you had before, so you don't have to do the 360 divided by 6 again if you don't want to, because we know that's 60 degrees. Copy, again, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D, and now I have my chambers. I'm going to Control Z, and I am going to nudge that down a little. And then over here is your dimensions for whatever you have selected. I'm going to bring that up to 1.25, and since I have this little chain here, it's automatically going to change that to 1.25 once I hit enter. And make sure everything is centered when you do that. As you notice, it kind of built it a little off to the side. That is a much better proportion. Before it was like a 22, but we want a 338 or a 38. There we go. 338 is a rifle. Rotate, Alt, click, copy, Control D, Control D, Control D, Control D. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Now, I am not going to need this little construction circle anymore, so I delete that. We now have our cylinder. I could go in here in Pathfinder and do the minus front again, but it's not really necessary. These can be multiple shapes. The plotter is only going to see these lines here. It's not going to show anything that's not a line. If you want to ever see what your plotter is going to plot, come up to View, go to Outline, and that shows you just your paths. That is all your plotter will see. Will not see anything but those paths. Case in point, preview. I will grab this rounded rectangle tool, make sure I have a fill and a stroke. Come up here, make sure that I'm in the center of this. Push Alt and pull out a little rounded angle, and I'm going to move that down just a couple little nudges on my keyboard. I want to make sure that I do not get any of this into this top circle, because it's a bullet chamber and those need to be perfectly round, and I don't want to accidentally flatten it off. But now it looks like there is not a path going through there. If I print it, it will print out just the black lines. But if I go File or View Outline, there's a line. The plotter's going to see that. It's going to cut that. So always go back and forth between Preview and Outline. Double check to make sure that you don't have any stray lines. I will show you a couple of ways to get rid of those stray lines as we go. Next, rectangle tool. This time I want pointed edges. Again, make sure I'm in the center. Alt, so I pull from the center, and we're going to pull out a little rectangle, like so. Now I could leave that just the way it is, but I want to grab my direct select tool, and the direct select tool allows me to pick individual nodes or individual paths, where the select tool will select entire objects. The reason why is I want to grab that node right there, and I'm going to nudge it with my keyboard arrow keys into, and I want to repeat that on this one. Now that kind of gives it more of a little trapezoid. Now, select one of them, hold shift and select the other, and that selects them both. And then come back over to your Pathfinders tool, shapes. This time we want Unite. And what the Unite tool does is it removes everything in the middle or in the center of your objects and leaves the outline, like so. So now I have that little sight platform. Now we need a barrel on this guy. So we go into the ellipse tool, find the center of that chamber, push Alt, push Shift, and drag it out to about there. Now I have a cylinder that is the outside of the barrel, and it is attached to the sight mount. Again, select both of those, hit your Unite. Now it looks like it's gone, but if I come over to my little fill and stroke and I remove my fill, you can now see that I have that inner cylinder and my platform. I still have that line, but it can be gotten rid of real easy. I'll show you one way right now. Select everything, come over here to divide. Now it has divided all of that path, and it looks like it got rid of your chambers, but if you go to outline, it didn't. It just put a fill on that main outline of white so you can't see them. But doing that has also created a second problem. If you notice, this is kind of a thin line, and these lines got thicker. It's because there is now two paths there. The plotter will see both of those paths, and it will grab just a paintbrush tool. It's going to go and it's going to cut, and then it's going to come back, drop the blade, and cut it again. And what that ends up doing is it ends up cutting through your vinyl mask and then through your backing, and you don't want that. It does two things. It ruins the mask unless it's just one small little area that you've missed, but most of the time it completely ruins the mask. And the other thing it does is dulls your blade cutting through that backing material. You don't want that. A blade will last a long time if you're only cutting through vinyl, but if you start cutting through that kind of cardstocky backing material, you'll go through a blade real quick. But I use the divide, and I have it all there. You can select all, and it all has it selected. Object, ungroup. Now it broke everything apart, so now it doesn't matter if I use my selection tool or not. My direct select tool, it selects individual portions. There's a dark circle here. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to hit delete, and it got rid of one of those. Same for that one, delete, got rid of both. Now this one is part of this whole site platform. So I want to grab the direct select tool, come in here, and I'm going to find when it gives me an anchor, which is a little square, and click on it. Now you see it got rid of just that, and now when I go to outline, I have one of, oh, okay, so I see. This and this is all one, so when I deleted that, I got rid of both of them. So I'm going to grab my direct select tool, click on that anchor, delete, and then delete again. Now that deleted just that extra path while leaving the center path. Click on that anchor again, delete. Okay, always be careful. You can make mistakes like that, not knowing what's still grouped. But now I go view, outline, and I have my barrel and my cylinder revolver. Preview. Select all, reset, and get rid of that fill, and you can see it better. Okay. Now I'm going to build the trigger guard. I want a rounded rectangle for that. And I want to make sure that I'm centered on the original piece. Push Alt and drag it out. And I want it to be about like that. Now it needs to be longer, so I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab this center square until the little double arrow things pop up. This will pull the corner left and right. Pretty self-explanatory. If you get the little curved thing, you could rotate it, pull it down to a little bit below there. Now, I'm going to pull that down out of the barrel so I don't get a flat barrel. Now, as you can see, I've got overlaps again, and I need to get rid of those. I'm going to show you an easier way to do it, but there's the downside. There's this little dynamic sketch tool. It is not a part of Adobe Illustrator. This comes from a aftermarket group called Astute Graphics. I'll put a link to them down in the bio of this film, but it is a plugin that costs money, but it drastically speeds this up. The dynamic sketch tool allows you to just kind of sketch lines however you want, like a pen tool, and it makes a path. Real simple. But the other cool thing that this does is if I hit Shift, you see that little exit pops up next to my cursor? And then when I drag across a path while holding Shift, it deletes it and stops wherever it intersects. Now I don't have the double cut lines that I have to go get rid of, but I got rid of, kind of like I did up here, I got rid of that overlapping really fast. Shift, gone, Shift. Gone, Shift, gone. Speeds that process up a lot. There's quite a few other tools that Astute Graphic have that are handy. There's a mirror tool. Direct, I'm trying to remember the name of it. Direct Proofs allows you to adjust the nudge feature. So when you're using your arrow keys and stuff, I'll just bring it up. Measure, window, Astute Graphics, Direct Proofs, right there. Okay, you can keyboard increments these, or you can click right here and it brings up the window, and you can set that to 1 inch or 1/1000th of an inch for more precise keyboard nudges. Kind of handy as well. But that's an outside aftermarket program plugin that costs money. So now, again, select everything and scale it down just a little so it'll fit in your board, and then move it up I want it to stay centered, so I'm going to hold shift while I move it up. Now I'm going to make that pistol's grip. And for that, push Alt. Oh, I want a rectangle tool for this. Alt, bring it up, bring it out. That looks pretty good. Bring this up just a hair. Okay. Grab my direct select, select that corner, nudge it in a few. I did 3, so whatever you do on the outside, you want to do on that side. That's 3. Come down here, nudge these out. I'm going to do 6 out and 6 out. Now, select it and make sure that it has a fill. The reason why I'm doing this is since I changed it from an actual 90-degree rectangle, I do not get my little corner tools. But if I go fill, direct select, and then I can click in the center of it and it selects that, it brings up my corner tools. Or icons. And what those allow me to do is grab, and then I pull it in, and it rounds off the corners. And I wanted to round them all off the same. There we go. Now, I'll go ahead and change that back to just a path with no fill. I will grab my dynamic sketch tool and kill the lines that I do not want. A lot faster than going into the Pathfinder, dividing everything out, object, ungroup, and deleting the individuals. Play with your Pathfinder tools, because sometimes these Pathfinder tools will do what you want without having to go in and manipulate and all that. They are quite powerful. If you do not have the Astute graphics, or anytime you're making a graphic like this, I highly recommend selecting everything you have done and then coming into the Pathfinder and finding the outline and clicking it. Now what that does is it brings it down to one path. Overlapping paths are removed. Be careful, it does not do it all the time. I haven't figured out what parameters cause it to not do it, but occasionally I will get a double cut, but I have found that by doing that it gets rid of 99% of them. But it also removes your fill and your stroke. So when you go and click off, it looks like it disappeared, but you can see, go to view, it's still there. Back to preview, select everything, hit your little default stroke and fill. I like to remove the fill just so I have nothing but the paths, because that is all the plotter is going to see. And if you're exporting this into Cameo or Cricut or some other software, occasionally it will put the path and the fill, and then you get the double cut again. So the computer only needs the paths anyway, so just bring it back to the path. You can adjust the width to give it a little bit more of an appearance. Your computer can make it big and thick, but the little blue lines is all your plotter sees. So there you go. You now have a stylized revolver looking down the barrel that you can now send to your plotter and then peel out the individuals. I did forget to do one thing to make it look like the other one. Alt, Shift, drag out, click anywhere, grab it again, find the center, Alt, Shift. Now you have a cool little bullet in this one, but none of the others. If you want them in all of them, click on the outer circle, hold Shift, click on the inner circle. You have them both selected. Now if you hold Alt, you'll notice you have two little triangle select icons. click and start dragging, and it starts to pull it. Now I want it to go straight across, so if I hit shift, locks that constraint. Boom. And what that did was took a copy of this and put it there. So alt, start dragging down, push shift to lock it in a constraint. Boom. Alt, start dragging, hit shift. Boom. There you go. Now you have bullets in all the chambers. You can put one in there if you want, but in my opinion you wouldn't be able to see that because this would just be a solid black. Well, I've got it all messed up now, so solid black. You can grab this, anchor, shift, and I still got that tail and I want to stop, press alt, anchor, shift, there. And we now have a stylized pistol. Pretty simple, basic shapes, Pathfinder, and a little bit of creativity, and you can build your own. Let's go ahead and move on to the next project.